T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Welcome to the show. I'm Ken Kara, and I hope you have your permission slip signed and your third base hoagies packed in a cooler, because we're going on a field trip to the Everhart Museum in Scranton to check out NASA's Hubble Space Telescope New Views of the Universe exhibit. Hubble launched on the Space Shuttle Discovery in 1990, and it's still being used to expand our knowledge of the universe. Let's start our visit at the Everhart with Tim Holmes, the museum's CEO, and James Lansing, the curator. It's interesting to think about, because you talk about the history of this building. I was curious. I was actually going to ask you what this was before it was the museum, and I was like, it's interesting. You have such an older building, and you said you're trying to fit in these huge pieces of the exhibition that's dealing with this telescope that's changed our understanding of the universe that 118 years ago they probably weren't even thinking about. So what was it before it was?
It was built as a museum. It's pretty amazing. So Dr.
Okay.
Everhart built this thing in 1908. He had his family fortune that he felt this was needed. So we are a museum of natural history, science, and art. So it has always been. It was created to be something that really kind of hit all those kind of elements. And so that's part of the reason why NASA agreed to this, because we are a science and museum. So it was built for this, but it was built again 118 years ago, where they didn't have loading docks and big doors to get these things. This exhibit came in crates that were almost 10 feet high, 4 feet wide, 4 feet deep, 1,200 pounds. Yeah, it was just like it was a feat to get it into the building, and but we got it done. We had some local help. My brother happens to have a big warehouse in Scranton, so he tapped into that. Cadden Brothers Moving helped us to get them from that warehouse here, and we did it kind of one at a time. We had to get a special tent from Reading, PA, that would, because you just couldn't do it with a standard tent, to unpack everything outside, bring it all inside, one piece at a time.
How does this process get going and the idea come about and say, hey, this is something that I think would really fit here in Scranton?
Well, when I first started here, I was looking for exhibits. And I know we have a lot of local artists, but I was looking for science exhibits. And I love space like you. I always wanted to be on Star Trek. So I just started searching, and then I searched space exhibits, and NASA came up, and this exhibit came up, and it just started from there. We went back and forth, emails, and the requirement was, is your space big enough? And we were big enough, so Faith at NASA said, okay, we'll put you on the list.
The cool thing about Hubble, if you come in just on a surface level, you could just look at the amazing photos and say, wow, these are pretty space pictures, and then you could just keep diving deeper from there.
Yes. Well, especially if you look at the Hubble sky map, you can go in and see exoplanets, and it gives you a really up-close view of those planets and exoplanets and galaxies.
Why do you think this was such an important thing for NASA to move around the country and for you to bring in? What's kind of the message of it? What's the point of it?
I think for me the message is to keep space in people's minds. That is not just something they see on paper. They can actually see the images, and I think space exploration and technology is one of the most important things we can focus on.
We're in a time right now, there's so much information out there. There's so much out there, especially with space and science, that what's true, what's not true. And here you have an exhibit that you can sit down and say, hey, let's learn about the Hubble Space Telescope. This is coming right from NASA.
That's a very good point. You're hearing more and more people actually talking about flat Earth theories and stuff like that. So there's no better place than right here, right now, to take a very good look at what the heavens actually look like. And it's really cool that this is what Hubble is seeing, and this thing was created a few decades ago. But now what we're seeing with James Webb just takes it to another level, which there's also a sneak peek of that in this exhibit. So I just think it's so important that people just see this, they get to realize the world we're inside. A lot of people get hung up in their day-to-day, whatever's going on in the world, and they may get lost in that. I think we all have to sometimes set back and say we're a speck of dust floating through this amazing universe, and we just have to. I think for me it's consoling. I think it's important to just see that and just say, okay, we're just part of a bigger thing here. Let's just kind of roll with that.
What has been your favorite part of looking at this exhibit? Is there something that you were drawn to?
So I love just kind of the whole structure of the piece. Yeah. So just having it here, having the replica of the Hubble is very cool. Like it's a scaled down version, but it, just understanding that it's the size of a school bus kind of floating around. And it's interesting what some people are saying. They thought it was as big as 10 school buses. They really didn't know, but until you get here and you see it. But they have a great timeline that explains, kind of where it all began, where the theories all began, and then why they felt it was important to get this thing up into space. And I just think that's a great thing for us to share.
Have you had a connection to space or interest in space, like being little, or is it just something that was on the outside with you, or were you a bit of a space fan, space nerd coming into this?
So I think nerd would be a little strong, okay. But I do have, I will say, I went to Neil Armstrong Elementary School here in Scranton, so North Scranton, and it's pretty wild that they had, it opened in 1972. That was the first year I started, so it was this fresh, brand new school, and they had a planetarium in it, and it was the only planetarium in the city. So this is, just think about it. It's Neil Armstrong. It's named 3 years after this guy lands on the moon. So to me, it just seemed very natural because I'm a kid, but you really think backwards and you're like, my God, he's like a young guy, and they're naming schools after him. So Scranton had the wherewithal to name him that. So this planetarium, schools from around the city would all come to visit, but it was our planetarium, so it was kind of cool. But I was a nerd enough back then that I really warmed up to the guy who was Mr. Bullitt, who was in charge of the planetarium, where I would be able to help in the background when other classes were there. So I'd get out of class and be able to help and hold the flashlight and point some things out and everything. So I made sure to really get into it. So no, that was a big part, and I just remember just being a fan of it since then, and and I like my Star Trek as well. I always got a kick out of it. I thought it was more funny than spacey, but I always got a kick out of Shatner and all those wacky things. So.
During each segment, James Lansing will give us a closer look at part of the Hubble exhibit. Enjoy.
So what this exhibit shows is how Hubble's actually able, and later the James Webb telescope, how they're actually able to see what is in the Hubble sky map. Ultraviolet and infrared light. And it gives you an example. If you put your hand through all the ultraviolet and the infrared, how they're able to see the whole spectrum through space and then come up with what it actually looks like.
So that's pretty neat. So I think, what's channel 3 there? Does that say that's infrared, or is that?
That's ultraviolet. Yeah.
Okay. Coming up next, we'll take a look at how Hubble images are processed and how astronauts did some repairs to the telescope in space. Welcome back to the show. I always had an interest in space, but it really blossomed in high school thanks to good old dial-up internet. After 5 minutes of logging on, I found this image, the Hubble Deep Field. Back in 1999, it made me pause my MP3 player blasting Smash Mouth's All-Star and stare for, honestly, I don't know how long. I couldn't believe all of the other galaxies that were out there in this one piece of sky that would look blank to the naked eye. I still really can't wrap my head around it. I love this image so much I made it my desktop wallpaper. So while Hubble has made so many big scientific discoveries, it's also pulled in many people just like me, mesmerized by its beautiful images, who just want to learn more. We'll start our tour back up at the Everhart Museum in Scranton, surrounded by many wondrous images taken by the Hubble Space Telescope. We're at another part of the Hubble exhibit here at the Everhart Museum, and this is really neat. We got the tunnel behind us. There's a bunch of images. Explain what's right behind us here.
We have images from Hubble, and then we also have sky images filtering through, and you actually have the feeling that you're actually in space, which is really cool.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
How has it changed really in your lifetime? You said you've always been interested in this. I grew up basically with Hubble, so I always saw these amazing deep space images of galaxies and everything. What was it like when you were growing up? Was it a little bit different? You probably had Voyager happening when you were little? Or?
Yeah, that was happening, and then like I said, I'd always go back to the planetariums. And it started with them just showing us like pictures of things would look like, but now we actually get to see exactly what they look like. And it's amazing. And what this exhibit also does is teach you how they're able to see these things that are hundreds of light years away and how far that really is away. That can they really see these planets? And they just see different ways, different light, different ultraviolet light, and they find out exactly what's going on there, which I find amazing that they can do that.
What have you learned from this exhibit?
What I'm learning the most is, as I just said, how they're able to see these things that are so far away when people start thinking of light years, and that's 186,000 miles a second that light travels, and how far away these things are, you really get the sense of how big the universe is.
Does the exhibit hit on at all how they process the photos or anything, or is it just here's how the telescope is seeing the light and bringing it to the ground?
No, they actually show you in parts of the exhibit how that all happens.
Oh, no kidding.
And how they actually get the images. So they show that. And like Tim said, how big the Hubble is. Everybody thinks it's as big as the Empire State Building, but it's really just this small telescope as big as a school bus.
I briefly was looking up things about how Hubble opened our eyes to things like dark matter, how planetary systems are formed. There's a lot of interesting things. I'm looking at the famous shot right now of the pillars of creation from, I believe, the Eagle Nebula. That's really cool. You're seeing stars being born right there. I mean, these things just jump out at me.
It's amazing. And what the exhibits also show you is, like you already asked in the past what it looked like, but how close they can get now with Hubble, and then with James Webb, it's even more clear exactly what's going on in these different galaxies and nebulas and things like that.
Because you do learn a little bit about James Webb in this exhibit, which is the new major telescope that's out there. And if I'm getting this right, if it's wrong, I'll just fix it in editing. But that has more of an infrared view of the universe.
Yes, and they can get clearer, crisper shots of what's going on in these rings of these nebulas and these galaxies. And they just get closer, more refined images.
What's crazy is that Hubble has been around for 30 plus years. They're still using it though. We talk about how we have James Webb and it's a great tool, but Hubble's still being used.
Yes, and what we're going to add to the exhibit is we're going to have a couple iPads where you can actually watch what the Hubble sees every day.
Oh, really?
So you can go into it live and see what Hubble sees, and you can go back months and weeks to what they were looking at certain days. So that's cool too.
I read also, I don't know if this was, again, just briefly online, that part of the exhibit also talks about how they went up and they would service the space telescope. And that's been interesting as I read biographies about a number of astronauts. I think of Mike Massimino, if you do watch The Big Bang Theory, he was on there a few times. In his book, he was on one of the NASA, or one of the Hubble servicing missions. And that's an interesting component of this.
Yes, and part of the exhibit also is we actually have a part of the exhibit with the tools that they actually use to adjust different parts of the telescope. And the tools they use is actually explained here also.
It's interesting because I have a telescope at home. I have a reflector with the mirror in it and everything. Nothing obviously on the size of Hubble, but it's incredible when I think about how touchy my telescope is and how hard it is for me to take a photo at night just by myself. And I think about the scale that they're doing it on with something like Hubble. It's incredible. What do you hope people walk away from this when they're leaving the building? What do you hope they walk away with?
I want them to be amazed by space the way I am.
Yeah.
And I want them to really see how important space exploration is, and that technology comes a lot of times from space technology, and it filters down. And I just want people to have an understanding of the budgets that go into NASA are definitely worth it.
I'm going to have you walk us through a few pieces of the exhibit, but what kind of pops to you? What would be the first thing that you would go to?
The Hubble Sky Map.
Okay.
That's the one where you can really get close-up views of the planets and the galaxies that they've been able to see with Hubble. Well, this is my favorite part of the exhibit. It's the Hubble Sky Map. We can actually see what Hubble saw. We can see stars, galaxies, exoplanets, exotic things in the universe, which I pretty much think the whole thing is, and nebulas. And we can get very close-up views by just clicking on. So we can see this galaxy, this spiral galaxy. And again, it gives people an idea of other galaxies and how far away these things are.
And so you click on the parts of the sky, and it'll show you what Hubble saw.
What Hubble saw exactly.
There are some local companies that have some ties to NASA that are going to get involved in this exhibit, and Shot Glass is one of them. Will you tell us about that a little bit?
Well, Shot Glass contacted Tim, and they've worked with Mirrors and NASA. They've worked with them in the past. Gentex is another one that that's going to get involved with us with this exhibit. So any local companies that think that they can add to this exhibit, give us a call, because we're open to putting more things in the exhibit that we can.
That's fascinating. A company locally that helps make mirrors for telescopes and that. And then I think the other company had something to do with helmets or...
Yeah, they make some kind of helmet fiber.
Okay.
But I'm sure we can get something that involves that, because maybe they're connected some way.
You know you made it in life when LEGO comes calling, and the Hubble Space Telescope was featured with the Space Shuttle Discovery in a set commemorating STS-31, the mission that deployed the telescope. We still have a few more parts of the Hubble exhibit to get to before we hit the gift shop, plus James Lansing will tell us what life is like as a curator at a museum while also being a major space enthusiast.
James Webb is the next progression of telescopes from NASA, and it's able to see things clearer and much further away. And the telescope itself is probably the same size, a little bigger than the original Hubble. And we have a model right here, 120 scale of what it actually looked like. So it's just able to get clearer shots of the universe. And again, I'm sure in a few years we'll have the next progression of telescopes, seeing further and further into the universe, clearer and clearer images.
It's interesting, if we take a walk down here, because from my understanding with Webb, this is it right here. So infrared lets you see through the dust clouds. It will, so while Hubble, I think Hubble would be on what, the left there, and then you can see on the right how James Webb is able to see through the dust clouds a little bit.
And it's so much clearer with Webb, you can see. Gets right through that, get the glass or the gas in the clouds, and we can see so much more with Webb. So when people talk about the money that goes in, like I said previously, into NASA, this is why it goes into NASA. And the science that comes out of it helps everybody.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming back to the show. NASA has a great website featuring beautiful images taken by the James Webb Space Telescope, but before you go check that out, let's wrap up our visit to NASA's Hubble Space Telescope New Views of the Universe exhibit at the Everhart Museum in Scranton. We've walked around a little bit, you've given me a little bit of a tour. Is there anything I left out from the questions earlier or later that you feel is important about this exhibit?
Well, we just showed you a sliver of what's here. There's a lot of other interactive videos here, hands-on items for people to learn a lot about NASA and the tools, pictures, but different parts of Hubble that people will learn all about.
And this will be here, how long will the exhibit be in town?
Well, what's funny is when we first got the exhibit, they asked, do you want it 4 months or 6? And I said, we'll take it 6.
Yeah.
So it's here to at least July 14th. What's really funny is we're the last stop for the exhibit. There's other cities that want it, but that schedule's not been set, so who knows? We might be able to keep it a little longer. And if we're able to do that, we will definitely do that.
You've been a curator, you said, at museums all over. I think you said a lighthouse museum, and I think it's interesting because even me, I walk in and I guess you're telling a story with each exhibit, with everything you bring in.
Yes. And again, you're trying to teach people about whether it's art or science or natural history, and it's really nice we have all three here. And this exhibit fits that perfectly. And we just want people to, when they come to the museum, have a pleasant experience, but to see that all this stuff the Everhart has, they can see in other museums, but they can see it right here in Scranton. And cities like Scranton do not have a museum this size. And for someone that's been in museums for 20 plus years, it's a very special place here in Scranton.
We were just walking along and chatting as we were setting up cameras and everything, and you said to me, if aliens landed today, I would go with them. I would, in an instant, you'd go check everything out.
Oh, I would leave tomorrow.
Yeah.
They can land on the grass outside and tell me I'm not coming back. I'm going because I want to see space. I've seen the planet. I want to see other planets too.
What gets you excited about space now? When I was little, I always thought, oh, well, we're going to Mars and all this made me excited. I didn't realize how cool the International Space Station was. But when you look at space exploration, or even what NASA's doing with science, what gets you excited right now?
What gets me excited about space is that they're actually starting to like go to Mars, and that they're going to want to put a colony on Mars. And if they need people to do that, I'll do that. But that excites me, that they're actually moving out into the universe. And I think they should be doing it faster, but as we discussed, maybe that's a budget issue, but I want it to happen while I'm here. Like, I want to see more and more.
That's what I told my wife. I said, just keep me alive. My wife's a dietitian trying to keep me healthy. I was like, I just want to see us get to Mars. If you'd like to learn more about the Hubble Space Telescope, NASA has several free ebooks at this web address, and we'll post a link to that site on the SSP TV Facebook page. We hope this look at the Hubble Space Telescope exhibit has satisfied you and left you wanting more. That's what she said. You didn't think we'd go to the Everhart Museum in the Electric City and not visit the Office exhibit celebrating one of the most popular shows of all time that was set in Scranton, did you? There's so much else to check out. As you mentioned the Office exhibit earlier, and it's actually, I could see Michael Scott staring me in the face with Dwight as we're recording this right now. There's a lot for people to take in when they come in, if they perhaps come to see the Hubble exhibit, but there's so much more to do. What else is offered here?
So we have a lot of fun things. It's a great time to see the Hubble and all the other stuff. So we do have an exhibit for NBC's The Office. So it just opened about 2 months ago. We've been working on it for about a year or so. When I started here, I had reached out to Greg Daniels. He's the creator of The American Office. I had worked with him back in 2007 and 2013. Me and a very small group of people created an Office convention in 2007, and then an Office wrap party in 2013. So we had developed a relationship, so I know a lot of the folks on the show and everything. So when I had sent a note to him that I got this job and I think it would be a cool place to have an exhibit to the Office, he said nothing would make him more proud than to have an exhibit in Scranton, which is awesome. So he then opened the door for me to NBC Universal Archives and all the other stuff. So we have actual props and wardrobe from the show. But he just said, hey, if Scranton asks you for it, you give it to him. And so it's pretty cool that we got this set up.
Going back to The Office, it was interesting because it really is a character on the show, and Scranton starts off, and it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, like, oh, here's this little city, that's whatever. But we're always proud of our area, but throughout, I think people became proud of Scranton and interested in it.
I think so. So we tried to tell that story here. We explained to people why Greg Daniels chose Scranton as the home of The Office, which is just pretty cool. It's meant to be a satellite branch, so it's meant to be in a smaller city outside of New York, so they could have that little kind of go into corporate for meetings and such. But yes, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I think they appreciated the fact that we got it kind of early on. So when we did bring all the cast here in 2007, they also brought all the writers. And after our convention, season 3, season 4, it begins to get even more. They lean more into that Scranton character, which is actually pretty cool. So it ended up becoming like an endearing character in the show. So that's why people are making these pilgrimages to come here. So as I mentioned earlier to you, last week we had somebody, a mother and daughter from Israel who had come. The daughter's first time in the States. She looked about 14, 15 years old, but she told her mother she'd go to the States as long as we go to Scranton. It's just one of these things that people just feel a need to get here. So I think that's very special. One of our favorite headlines from the 2007 convention was the Philly Daily News, I believe, said that Scranton had gone from cold to cool.
Thank you all so much for watching and witnessing the first ever That's What She Said joke uttered on SSP TV. Until next time, take it easy, everyone.